Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Virtual Velo Podcast with me, Emma Martin, and my co-host, Chris Schwenker. Well, there is so much to talk about today. There's the Zwift World Series. There's the Esports World Championship qualifiers. There's the announcement of the Esports Olympic Games. And on top of that, the MYTIKAS Games starts on July the 26th. And we have Richard Vale from Flamme Rouge Racing here to discuss the tri-arena approach to the event. Chris, the listeners are going to need to hang on to their hats.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many things going on now. The landscape is real hotting up, as they say. But it's interesting because everybody knows, if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you've pretty much know what my feeling is as far as the multi-platform model and it being a proof of concept for an international calendar. And someone had to be first. Right, someone had to break the ground. Somebody had to create a grassroots effort, and sometimes it works that way, right? There's a groundswell of the community, and there's somebody that puts themselves out there and does all the work. And we have that person with us, and I'm really interested in looking forward to exploring how it happened, what was his inspiration was, and how we're moving forward with it.
Well, Richard, it is great to have you with us today. Now, a lot of listeners may already know about Flamme Rouge Racing and Richard Vale, but let's start with you, shall we, for those that don't. That background. Tell us a little bit about your background and your cycling and sporting history and how you got into the gig.
Well, yeah, I think it was my wife who actually got me into cycling, actually, more than anything else. Back just before Sir Bradley Wiggins, actually, sort of went through all of those sorts of Olympic Games, winning the Tours. So it was about a year before that I actually sort of got back into that. Prior to that, I was a golfer at the end of the day. So it was a combination of my wife getting me into biking and a friend saying, I'm doing a triathlon. Could you actually come and actually cycle with me? You might like it. And then I turned my back on golfing, having done it for 30 odd years, and turned into a biker. I think Zwift came along for me in around 2017. So I got involved in there. So I was organising 20 to 30 odd different teams, I think, in the ZRL space, and all through sort of the COVID sort of spaces in there. And I think during that period of time, I started to inquire, I get inquisitive about events. I thought, who can put events on? How do you put events on? And I think from there, FRR started to be born, I think, at the day, saying, what could I do differently? What could we do differently? We've got so hence that's where the FRR brand started to come along, which was all about tour event, sort of multi-day events. We see the Grand Tours, as we're seeing with the Tour de France now, as we see with Chasing Tours as they're particularly doing currently, and getting towards the end of their 21 stages. Could I bring something that actually says, it's not just an hour, although it is just an hour, but it's an hour every day, or it's an hour and a half every day, and how much could we actually do? So that sort of brand started to appear. We did 4 tours, and we've kept that going now for 4 odd years. In the first one, we had 80 riders, I think, turn up for the first Tour France, and the largest we've had is 2,500 people get through into a January session. Well, January is always the biggest one, I think, as I would call it. It's the turkey burner. People get past New Year's, and then this sort of week sort of tour kicks off, and we can get 2,500 people will turn up and do a 7-day, 8 stages in 9 days with a combination of individual time trial and just normal races. Yes, they're tough, but they were always designed to be tough, with also the ethos of how a tour runs, how a stage race runs for 7 days. And this year, obviously we ran Triquetra in March, which had first time we put 21 stages together, starting on a Saturday, ending on a Sunday, and saying, okay, we're going to do a grand tour. If I could take it to the level of, and there are certain mad people who would do it, 200-kilometer stages for 3 weeks, then we would. But I think we have to be mindful that you wouldn't get many finishers and those sort of things. But we got, I think, even when we did our 21 days stage this year, we had over 350 people who did all the stages across the 8 the time zones that we do it. So some mega efforts out there that people put into it. I think FRR has come along and said, okay, well, what can I bring different? The different word says, okay, then and again we'll have Series 4 this year, and we'll do things things, again, we'll look to use what the platforms can offer and how we'll take that forward. We've got a great following, I think, on the Zwift platform and the riders there. I think I had, in January, I had riders inquiring to me, well, what will be the schedule for Series 4? Because I've got to try and organise things. So they were trying to organise things for September, October time in January. And again, well, I really haven't thought about it too much. But, so I think it is just built and built and built. Whether it's built because they like the racing, whether it's built because they like me, or the way we do things, it's really pleasing that actually some of the things that we have done ourselves, even without game, whistles and bells, without functions, have been taken into other platforms. Case and example for that, when we first started, I really hated in Zwift the dragster race starts. I just thought that is just not how it works, is it? We don't all set out it's gone. So the kilometre zero where we all roll out and just be under control and then go. So I loved that particular thing in indieVelo, for instance, where you can actually just set that pace to set people out, get the bunch together, and then if you want to go, you can go. So at least it means that you're just not sitting there in your own little private pain cave going. So that's the origins, I think, of FRR, doing something differently and keep doing something differently. Keep asking ourselves, what could we do to improve? And that's the origins of FRR, I think, Emma, and how we look to move forward.
So your success is certainly undeniable, and I always admire the organizers on the platforms. You're doing so much work for very little reward and a lot of headaches. For you, with the level of expertise that you show and all the basically just pull up your sleeves and get to work, a lot of it's manual stuff that you do. What would be your inspiration for now trying to bring that to multiple platforms? What is the reason for this type of event going forward now and the MYTIKAS Games as a whole?
Yeah, and I think, now we've got 3 very good platform. When you look at the 2 newer ones, indieVelo and MyWhoosh, up until recently, they've been quite they've been building their technology to say, look, when you look at what applications people use, whether it's PCs, whether it's a Mac, whether it's iOS, whether it's Android or something else, then you've got to appeal to those mass areas. It was quite clear that actually, iOS is a big space to hit. Apple TV is a lesser space to hit, but iOS, you must get it on iOS working properly because not everyone's got a PC. I certainly don't use a PC, even though I've got access to one. I'll use an iPad. That's one of the key things, to be able to bring it to more people easily. Not everybody wants to go out and spend. I think on a PC you need a bit more of a spec'd up PC to be able to handle the graphics, handle those sort of things, to get the experience. iOS makes it very simple. So iOS is really key platform for any of these applications to work across. Get that right, get the feel right for that. Obviously, indieVelo have been testing that. MyWhoosh had got up to that sort of stage out there. And I think everything that we do keeps feeding back into those spaces to say, right, actually, could you do this? Could you do that? What about this? And they're listening, I think, at this point in time, so they can tweak things. But I think the biggest thing, ultimately, Chris, is that the other arenas, as I'll call them in MyTIKAS, can handle the 75% of the people who've actually got the applications on their machine. PC, Mac, iOS covers 75% of probably what people use. Without iOS, you're going to drop down to 50%, and that ultimately squeezes people in, says, oh, I can't use it, and moves away. Now, they've all got still problems. All platforms will still crash on us because at the end of the day, they're software on various Windows or whatever else. They'll all crash. So there's no point in, users going, oh, but it crashed on me. So, yeah, but everything will crash on us. We just hope it doesn't crash on us on something important. Simple as that. It's a PC. It'll crash. How many times do you reset your Skybox or your cable box because it's frozen on you? It's no different. They'll all crash because they're designed to crash. The key thing is they can support it. And then that will bring into play other technical challenges, I think, when you try and do something cross-platform. Without them being able to support at least 75% of what people own, then I think it becomes more niche to be able to do something across platform. You just say, right, it's not quite ready yet.
Very few organizers would be able to do what you're doing right now. You have that broad, loyal following. It's very appealing to see. And the way that you've formatted the games, you did it in a way where you're highlighting the positive features of each platform and pulling users in that may not have tried them, but because of you, they're motivated to give them a try. I want to try the multi-arenas. I want to give it a shot because Richard said it's a good idea, and you've provided a very compelling format in order to do that. What is the reason for you trying to do this? And because we know that there are going to be a lot of mistakes made. There are going to be a lot of things where it doesn't work out right. You know that you're going to be faced with a lot more headaches than just going on to Zwift and doing what you normally do and it usually running smoothly or whatever. Now you're basically breaking new ground here. Why would somebody who's established what you've established, you told us the numbers, why would you want to branch out in this way?
I think at the end of the day, I want to branch out because I think each, as you put it, each arena, I'll call them arenas because I do like the idea of calling them arenas. It's a bit like gladiatorial sort of thing. They've got different things to offer. It may make the other arenas go, yeah, actually, we might actually want to try and do that too. And that's not a copyrighted thing. That's just a natural evolution of, yeah, we want to do more. We want to engage our membership more, whether people are paying for it or not. So, I look at the options in both MyWhoosh and indieVelo out there to be able to do instant pointing on screen and those sort of things, to be able to do the controlled starts, to be able to do events such as how far can you go in indieVelo. And I just think I could have just stayed in one place, but you are restricted then. Again, I've been doing it for 4 odd years. Okay, that's still not as long as some people have been doing it. I think, again, I've never been afraid to try things. I think what we will do, I think you touched on it at the very start of it all, is you may be able to flush things out. You may be able to say, actually, right, that's something that needs to change to make it work better. Certainly one of those things that we can talk about in this, which needs to be really flushed out, which is classification of riders. But, that's probably the biggest technical challenge across multi-platforms, is getting a rider right and what is right. I think doing it, at the end of the day, the platforms can cope with it. The platforms can cope with holding a race. The question is how I can then bring that together into an engaging format for people around the planet at the end of the day. And that's where I look at what they have to offer in their racing format. There is a bigger thing to aim for, but I think at this point in time, as you put at the start of the program, there's definitely a building. Someone's got to take the first step and start building from there. And it might not be me who takes the second step. I might take the third or fourth, but somebody else might come on and do something else and build again. We all learn off each other. I think, from my perspective, there's lots of positives to come out of it, no matter what the challenges might present. The way that I've done MYTIKAS is to try and keep the challenges as simple as possible, not try to stretch too much, just enough to be able to say, look, that's what we can do here, that's what we can do there, this is what we can do in this place over here, and try and just bring that resulting together. They're all individual, just bring that resulting together.
Should we talk a little bit, Richard, about your actual format? Because it is really interesting, isn't it? Those 3 different arenas for the MYTIKAS Games. I'm just going to mention, starting on the 26th of July through till the 11th of August, the actual specifics, if we break it down in terms of what the MYTIKAS Games is. And it's a really interesting format, isn't it? Because formatted pretty much along those Olympic Games lines. Very timely given what's going on in Paris at the moment.
Well, exactly. I mean, in the intro, I think, Emma, you mentioned 2 or 3 other Olympic options that are coming on the platforms. Now, when we put MYTIKAS together, obviously it's all to do with the Olympics and those sort of things too, but I'm not allowed to use the Olympic word. So yes, so everything is themed about athletes, arenas. The language is all about athletes. It's not riders, it's athletes. Everything is gender specific. So it's only men racing men, women racing women. And I've used the platforms for what they can openly offer based on events that are in the Olympics at the end of the day, rather than try and make up some weird and wonderful things. So we are using those type of events. If I really wanted to do the 4x5, it would be a 4x500 relay. Trying to make that work now. There is a way to do it, but that would have been really me sat at a we'd have done it on the velodrome, indieVelo, and we'd have just said, like, okay, right, you'd have had to have been sat on the line and say, right, you first number one to go, and it would have been really quite.
Yeah,
the main issue with that really is getting across language barriers of people not all going at the same time. Your number 2 is going at the same time as your fourth rider, and going, what's going on? But I've been on events on Zwift where we've done. People will have a camera on the finish line, and you'll be going, okay, the like Omnium type events, last person over the line, you're eliminated. And you'll get messaged on screen, you're out. It just takes a lot of effort to do if you haven't got a control that says you'll do it. Olympic style event, and obviously in the Olympics you've got ITT, you've got road races and those sort of things. In each arena we'll do them slightly differently. the feel will be slightly different. I think it's also key. I think MyTIKAS will bring to people well, how does this feel? I'm used to one, I'm probably used to Zwift, but how did it feel doing a road race event with people and certainly less bots on indieVelo or MyWhoosh? How did it feel? Did it feel harder? Did it feel whatever else? And I may have set them up to have 100% feel on it. Maybe people will turn up and find out whether I have done that or not. And I think on those platforms as well, you've got less choice on have I got the best bike or whatever? No, you've all got the same bike. And certainly in our events on Zwift side, I would have always set people to have the same bike anyway, to try and take some of those gamification things out of play. So I think, again, keep to the events that are in there. And certainly with those three, ITT and road races, and I've done a mountain bike as well. Just use what the application can offer.
I'm going to run through really quickly for our listeners the events that you do have. You've got a 100 metres, a 200 metres, a 500 metres, a 1,000 metres, a 1,500 metres. I'm Kelly Holmes, by the way. 3,000 metres, 10,000 metres. You've got a high jump, a long jump, a marathon, an individual time trial, a road race, a triathlon, a mountain bike race. There's a whole range. And you've also pulled them together in different ways, so in terms of decathlon, heptathlon, pentathlon, really
Absolutely.
Interesting language and setup for what is cycle racing.
Effectively, yes. I mean, the interesting thing is for the track events, they are all back to back. So your 100 through to your 10,000 are back to back, and it only happens on one day. So there might be about 8 opportunities throughout the day to be able to do the track events, but they only happen on one day. Some people, I'm sure, will sit there and go, I didn't do a particularly good 100 meters, but I'll go and try that again in 3 hours time or an hour's time or something. And that's so you can piece it. It'll be your fastest time you record over that day. You don't have to do them back to back. Of course you can, and you'll just build up your time. But if you do a faster time a bit later on, and you want to do it again, then that's fine too. But it's only going to happen in one day.
Emma had mentioned that this is right around the corner, right? Where we're going to be setting up for this very soon. Someone listening to this might have a little bit of a hard time wrapping their head around, where do I go? How do I sign up for races in all these different arenas? So, Richard, why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown of the logistics? There's a website, centralized website. How do we register? How do we get into events? What do I need to do to get going?
Okay, so the first thing to do is probably associate yourself with the schedule and go to flammerougeracing.co.uk and just click on the schedule. You'll see when all the events are going to happen. So you'll see the dates there. I think the first one is the ITT sat in Zwiftland. So you'll see the dates that are happening. There isn't an event every day. There's some little gaps in there. And we're trying to avoid other events at the same time. There's a couple of other events, I think, just to give space to. You'll see the courses that they're on. You'll see the distances that they're running for. And everything is gender specific. So if you're going to go into Zwift, then you're going to have a male pen, you're going to have a female pen. All those events are already programmed into Zwift. You can look on your companion app for Zwift and you'll see every single event that comes up across the MYTIKAS Games already scheduled in there. So again, they're free to join. They are open on the companion. And that's the way that you would actually join anything in the Zwift space. If you want to be part of the resulting, we need to know about you. Simple as that. So you can go on to the flammerougeracing.co.uk, and again, in the top right-hand corner, there's my account. If you're not logging in because you haven't got an account, then you just register and give us a few basic details, and for that, we'll follow what it says on front. And that will then let at least us know you and be able to grade you from there. We will pull out the Zwift Racing app type connection, so we're going to pick up that type of base connection in there to say you are a platinum or a diamond or whatever you are. They've got a scale of 1 to 10. Diamond being top down to copper, and then that is a 10 scale for men and for women. And down the middle, we use our chili categories. We've got a 10 scale too, and it's just a pure direct one-to-one relationship in there. In indieVelo space, yes, you'll need an account there. They are free. Sign up to indieVelo if you haven't already done so. It would be helpful if people did 2 or 3 events there just to go and get some board classification within there. They have a slightly different categorization base. We've spoken to George within indieVelo, and we've sort of mapped, as I put onto our website, I think it's in the rules section, Chris, it's sort of that alignment between their sort of diamond 1, 2, 3, gold 1, 2, 3, and we've slotted that into that 10 scale, so you can see where you would actually land. All of indieVelo events, again, if you go, once you're logged in, you can go to where all the events are actually sort of listed to join an event. Now, I think ours will be in the unclassified section. There's a little button in there that says unclassified, and ours will all appear in there. The only reason they're in there is because actually we've got a few more whistles and bells to add to events to make things happen and to be a bit more controllable. So we could make things, we can pack an event with some bots, but we can make them all passive. So all the humans, if you want to win, you have to win. The bots are not going to help you other than give you people around you.
I just wanted to let the audience know that my contributor to the communique, John Wakefield, is going to be writing a fairly comprehensive report on this. And I know that you've been working with him with that, Richard. So that'll be out next week, and that'll help give everybody a black and white guideline for how to go about things. And pretty sure that you're also going to be breaking down the results into nations for the racers for the results. And
yeah, absolutely. Again, if what you can see on the current website again is something where I've just pushed in some example, probably taken an event and just converted it into the numbers for the triathlon or something like that. So I think when you register, you'll set your country up that you want to be. And that's how you'll be known. That's how we'll get that medal total going. Every event, whether it's 100 meters, there's a medal table for 100 meters, men and women. There'll be the same one for 200. So there's lots of medals going to go on in that sort of space, or lots of things to go on. You don't have to win all those or these. You could just go, right, I'm just going to go for the 100-meter blast. They're all set up as ITTs, so there'll be no draft from anyone. It's just you against the road for that 100 meters, and away it goes. It'll last all of 8 seconds, I'm sure, which is how it does do. The website, will break everything down by event, by gender, and everything should just be point and click and just break it out.
It's really appropriate that this multi-platform event or multi-arena event, as you call it, is based upon the Olympics, because the Olympics is the spirit of the Olympics is cooperation, it's teamwork, it's collaboration. And for the future of the sport and for this type of an event to move forward, the platforms have to have some sort of cooperation, or they have to at least acknowledge that they can benefit each other mutually by cooperating like this. So it kind of brings up a lot of questions as we look at the broader picture of an international calendar. And I've kind of, I've railed on about this. I know the people listening have probably had enough of it by now. But I truly feel that that's the future of the sport. And it makes you, first of all, somebody who's doing this, where is that cooperation? Where is the collaboration? Is that absolutely necessary for the sport to move forward, right, as we move forward? And then it also, what is the UCI's role in this, right? If they're the governing body of sport, is that their responsibility? Do they need to create an esports commission in order to bring all the players to the table and make sure that they play nice and say, listen, we need to come up with something, otherwise nobody eats or drinks for the next 24 hours? or is it the organizer's responsibility to bring this all together?
I think there's two levels, Chris. I think just looking at the very top level, esports at the top level obviously requires the UCI because of everything else that goes with it. You've got money, you've got sponsorships, you've got all that sort of stuff that needs to be controlled, because it means a whole lot more to that level, partly because there's dollars on the line, I think, at the end of the day. And if it's not controlled, then I think you've got to have that respected body at the top that can make things happen. I think then you've got I would say non-elite. Let's just call people non-elite. Elite, non-elite. Don't have to go, and there's various levels of that in a day. And I don't see UCI wanting to have anything to do with it, because I don't see their motivation is in the right place too. So I would say, well, why not just DIY it myself or ourselves as a community? That would be that would be the role, I think, of getting a trusted group together, just that actually cared about that community and actually getting it right, because I think the UCI has got enough to do, probably in its space. I don't see the two crossing borders, the same area. I would say it'd be very much a community-led area that would need a visionary and guidance and the right input from people who actually know stuff too. So it's not just about someone who's got a bright idea. It's got actually having the right input to it too. But I think the two are different. And the platforms themselves, yeah, absolutely. The platforms have got to have a voice in there and an interest in doing it, because they're providing the medium which we do it on. Without having an influence on it, then I think they're losing out too. They want to increase their presence. They want to increase what they do. At the end of the day, they don't do it because they want their staff to have a job. They want to do it because they're trying to bring something to the world. Their involvement is key, because actually, we also speak for the millions of subscribers to their platforms. That's what I'd like to think we do. And that's what that body should do. So having that worldwide cross-platform, I liken it to the PGA, as I've said before. We don't all play on the same golf course, but we all want to try different things and take our events somewhere else and try something here and then try something there. But build into something that actually, it just seems now like a natural evolution because we've got so many of them. And there are a couple of other platforms out there as well that I know that would want to be part of it. I think we'd be remiss not to mention places like Rouge, for instance, and Be Cool, part of that online esports space too. So I know they'd want to be part of it too. It's massive and it's the start of it, I think.
Yeah, one of those things really is that knowledge and learning, isn't there? I mean, you just said, Richard, a little while ago, you might be the first, you might not be the second, you might be the third or the fourth down the line, but the knowledge and experience that you are gaining in putting on the MYTIKAS Games, if you just keep that to yourself, then that learning and development and the pace of development across what is really a very fastly emerging discipline, it stalls, doesn't it? And actually, you need to keep that energy going and you need to keep that learning shared for
Absolutely.
The pace of that discipline to grow.
We'll have many things that we'll learn from all three platforms and we'll feed back to them about what worked, what didn't work so well, as I do now.
That really ties in also, doesn't it, to your involvement in the world's test events.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a good opportunity to help get some really sort of some good quality testing going into a space where it's very easy for platforms to go, actually, yeah, we've tested everything. But actually, if you've never really tested it across multiple platforms, across multiple people all over the place and those sort of stuff, and I know in theory, obviously, the finals won't be like that. Everyone will be in the same place on the same kit at the same time. But the qualifiers that are hoping to get there won't be. They're around the globe on different kit at different times, and it might only be a fraction of people who can actually even get there. But if it means one person can actually get to those finals because the testing that was done enabled them to get there rather than because they were just the best biker in Australia or Norway or wherever, then that has to be working with that platform because that's ultimately what they're trying to do. So getting involved with MyWhoosh in that space in there, giving them some honest feedback, things that they can improve upon, and we've got another event with them next week. It's very much really just helping them get that together. They're developing, they've got their developers working hard to get everything ready, but of course you never quite know until you get the feedback from 50 people going, well, that didn't quite, or what about this, what about that? I didn't see this. And we got quite a lot of feedback from the first one just to help MyWhoosh go, we'll write something down. We write a letter and go, yeah, it looks perfect. And then somebody else reads it and go, were you on something when you wrote this? And you read it back and go, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't even spot that because you're so focused in, actually, that's the right wording, that your mind's reading it, but actually what you wrote down is complete gibberish.
You yourself have responded, haven't you? You've responded to the community because there's been a call for an extra time slot, and there are now 3 time slots on July the 23rd, not just 2.
There's definitely been a demand to get the American and the US area into a space to get them online a bit easier. So yes, I think 23:30 UTC. So it's about 17:30, I think, your time. I think, Chris, that will be to bring that space in there. Again, it just has to appeal to everybody and to get more people in. So yes, so there's an extra time slot, and everyone should be getting, I'll say with my fingers crossed for this one, invites to them all. The only reason being is that a simplification to it is, we had a number of people who wanted to join, but then change their mind later. Oh, can I go for the early one? Just send everybody everything. Join what you can join. So yes, there is that extra time spot.
John actually wrote a recon report with some strategy that's on the Zwift also. So I'll put that in the show notes so everybody can go check that out. It has some course profiles and a pretty good description of the elements of the formats. And, he actually participated in the event. So he has got some firsthand knowledge. And we actually also, Emma, you'll be happy to hear, but Josh Harris did a video with some recon on it, on the article also. So we have a view from the pointy end of that. But, I think that after listening to you, Richard, I think that what you're trying to achieve here is just a celebration of all the different platforms and just highlighting what they do best and what the potential is there and moving it all forward for the good of the sport and potentially be in the future. So I really commend you for that. And we'd like you to hang around with us. So we're going to talk about what else is going on in the landscape these days. So if you wouldn't mind, I think Emma's going to introduce that for us.
Well, yes,
yeah,
indeed.
Sure.
And thanks, Richard, for talking to us about the MYTIKAS Games today. And it's going to be really interesting to have your opinions and comments on some of the things we're going to move on to and talk about. And the first one of those that we opened the very show talking about was the Zwift World Series. Now, the original announcement came out quite some time ago, Chris, and we talked about that on the show. But there has now been some updates to that and some responses to it from Zwift themselves. And the courses have been announced that they're going to use as well.
Yeah, they came out with a comprehensive, I guess, version 2 race guide, tech guide, and made a few improvements, a few changes. And I think they're actually planning on improving a few other things. But just want to let everyone know that the first open qualifier, this, the way that the World Series is formatted is that there'll be open qualifiers for the actual races, so that there is a pathway for the community to get into the elite level. They did listen to the feedback from the racers. The original format was very much individual racer centric, so they're going to add some more team elements to that. The first open qualifier is on September 5th, and the first race is on September 19th. And these dates are important because the first window for performance verification is actually going to open up on July 22nd, and the submission portal opens up on August 1st. And there are some big changes to the performance verification, Emma.
And what are those, Chris? Because I understand quite a shift from what would normally be expected from Zwift.
We know from last season that they moved away from the in-house Zada to indieVelo doing their performance verification and governance. Well, they've moved away from that this season as well, and they're utilizing a service that's actually headed by a team behind Bjorn Ossenbrink, who was the head of Zada, who then was consulting with indieVelo. The name of the company is Athlete Analytics, and they're going to be doing all the performance verification. So they're an independent body, and the way that it's going to work is that you do your pre-performance testing, you upload it to their website, I guess you would say, and they have algorithms that will do the performance verification. They're also going to add real-time performance verification to the point where I'm actually going to read it here. During the event itself, Athlete Analytics and the independent commissaire will be monitoring the races to ensure racers are compliant with the rules and regulations. If they identify any infractions that would cause a rider to be disqualified after the race organization reserves the right to remove these riders from the event to ensure that no such riders will impact the final outcomes, which I think is really great. We've been calling for that forever. Seeing it implemented will be something else. So the way that I look at this, and we've been talking about the broader picture, is that it's another element of the international calendars that we want to have a centralized database for all these athletes and all their performances to be fed into this independent performance verification center so that then all the platforms can utilize that. But there are questions about that, right? We know that Bjorn has fairly strong ties to indieVelo, although he doesn't have any financial interest in it. Curious with you, Richard, we utilize the analogy, you shouldn't be grading your own homework. Would you utilize a independent performance verification service like this for your events?
I think it comes down to, Chris, prizes and reward. So if the prize and reward mean that you need to go away from the fun and that element of it and just say, look, this is fun and exercise. A lot of people turn up for fun and exercise. If it's a fun and exercise type series or whatever else we're looking at, do we really need to verify other than going with the gut feel and the questions that we already deal with now? We verify people who look and smell not like Pogacar and yet have performance of greater than, and we flush those people out. But I think if you've got pound notes again on the line, and you put a series out there, then I think you absolutely have to, because otherwise there's enough people who will easily point at people, go, no way is that right, no way that they're that way, whatever else in there, and then from that point of view, you've got to have that respect, I think, as a organizer, to say we've done everything possible to ensure that the global playing field, which we're all in, is fair.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And it is about reputation, reliability. If national or international standings and rankings are involved, that's really important, because that is where we start to see issues. If people are going to be selected to go to World Championships off of the results, then those are the types of things where this is really, really important. And we talked earlier on about the role for the UCI, and for me, this is one of those areas.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that it's independent is really important. Will the UCI mandate that all World Championship host platforms use a service like this? I would certainly endorse that. I would certainly like to see that happening. And I also commend Zwift for taking the initiative here. I think that they always had an issue with having Zada be in-house for that exact reason. And when they had the opportunity to move it out, they did. But then it also also brings into question, why they did that. And, there are some interesting and exciting things going on at indieVelo also, Emma, that we should probably speak about, and then maybe explore the reason why they took that move away from indieVelo.
Yeah, so indieVelo have moved to open beta, haven't they?
Yeah, I remember when you asked George if he was ever going to do that. So there's your answer right there.
He did it really quickly after I asked him, so I was obviously in the right ballpark.
Absolutely. And they also introduced series functionality, which I think is really timely, because now would be the time that organizers like you, Richard, would be creating series, and they've provided the pathway for doing that. After reading the new Zwift racing rulebook, there's no mention of indieVelo in there. And last season, indieVelo was mentioned all over the performance verification and also for the governance. If you read the rule set, it says all decisions regarding racing incidents and performance verification will be made by the race commissaire. Then goes on to say contact details for the independent commissaire shall be included in the technical information for each of the races of the series. It's very clear that indieVelo is not going to be doing it. It's not clear who's going to be doing it. Yeah, we don't know that yet. But I know that when we had George on, one of the things that you and I discussed was he's positioning himself as a service provider. That may be his intention, but I think that Zwift, because of the very rapid development, because of the following he's gotten without utilizing any marketing, he's now a competitor. We have to face facts.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's national federations and it's the UCI who train commissaires in other disciplines. One of the questions for me really here is who is training commissaires in esports.
That's interesting, because George would be the only one that has any experience in that facet of the sport of the game, right? He's the only one who's ever done it.
Yeah, so that might be one that we need to take a little look into, Chris.
Yeah, maybe you could be the next one, Emma. That would be great.
I'm not sure whether I want to apply to be a commissaire. I've always stepped away from an event organizer, a line judge, a commentator, yes. A race commissaire, I have never been interested in going on one of those training courses and wearing that grey uniform. That's what it is in the UK.
Yeah, it seems like a thankless job, absolutely.
I think Chris, just going back to a point, the really important thing is that wherever it sits, if there's a central world index of riders that says, actually, I've been verified and continue to be verified, that's what everyone needs to be able to tap into. I mean, that's where the UCI sort of sits. Okay, here's my central list of riders. But from a global list of riders that we ride against in a non-elite space, and I think actually let's use the non-elite for everybody else. It's really important to say, actually, right, I've got a verified list here I could tap into, or as an organizer, again, whether it is, membership, whatever else it is, but ultimately you've got a verified list that says, okay, look, it's not going to warrant take away from you from a rider, but actually it can give us something different to actually aim for. So, right, actually, yeah, look, this is what we all really want. We want to know that we're racing against people who have been verified at the end of the day, and because actually that might open up other pathways to do things as an organizer.
That's a bit like what we were talking about the other week in terms of digital passports for elite racers, rather than it being in any other format, but actually part and parcel of that verification process. Why should you have elite verification on every single platform when you've done it once and you've been double checked and triple checked already?
I really think that what Bjorn's doing here is, really, it's also groundbreaking. If that takes hold and it's a database where all of these racers and all of their efforts and everything that they do is feeding into it, I think it really provides a huge potential. The challenges are that Bjorn has to, he's tied with indieVelo, so it's everything that goes on there is also tied with him. Creating that space through the work that he does and the backing or the following that he gets, utilizing his service is going to be really key for him. It all goes towards the big event that's coming up, Emma, which is basically barreling down on us now, is the World Championships, right? The federations are putting out their qualifiers, and the racers are, for lack of a better word, they're scrambling now because there's not a lot of time left.
Well, there's not, is there? And you and I, Chris, have been hot on the federation's websites looking for selection criteria for some time now, and it really is starting to gain momentum. We've got a number of federations putting on qualifying events on MyWhoosh itself, and the results of those are now coming through, and some very happy riders and racers I've been seeing on their Instagram social profiles recently. But also, some of the federations choosing not to have those selection events on MyWhoosh, but use other forms of criteria. But they are all starting to come together with that view that the national federations are putting forward their riders, their selection of riders for those semi-finals in September, prior to the Open qualification starting on MyWhoosh this summer.
The federations have to select their riders prior to that Open qualification, and the Open qualification starting on August 3rd. Actually, we'll give out those dates while we're speaking about it. The Open qualifiers are going to be on the 3rd, 7th, and 10th of August. The window for the federations to select their riders through qualifications or whatever discretionary process they're going to be using is August 1st. So we need to get that out there. And then, I published the first description of the tech guide way back in early May. Right, so this isn't anything new for the racers. I know that there's a resistance to change, but we knew about this for a while. And then the UCI let all the federations know their allocations. That was back in late March. So the federations have known how many racers they have, and they've also known that those allocations would only account for 80%, and that would be an open qualifying pathway that would account for 20%. And that's where we are now. So give us a little bit of background or details on the open qualifiers, Emma, and then we'll talk about the implications of that.
Well, the Open qualifiers are indeed a two-stage event. So three times on the 3rd, the 7th and the 10th. It's a two-stage event with those different dates. I believe once you are qualified, you cannot ride again. So if you qualify and make that qualification on the 3rd, then you can ignore the 7th and 10th and you can just watch to see who your competition is going to be. But they are going to take place on a variation of the world's course and formats. So it is going to be very similar to what you might have if you do qualify.
The rub here is that if you qualify through the open qualification pathway, then you get added on as an addition to your federation's allotment. So the British women, I believe, have 10 riders, and then they would have 11 or 12 when you qualify, Emma.
Oh, I was about to say in my dreams, they don't have a World Masters Esports yet.
But anyway, so one of the main issues that a lot of the racers came to me with was this one point of clarification. In the rule book, it says that riders must complete 3 premium events before the semifinals. And I clarified with MyWhoosh that they'll take 2 events. And it's not before the National Federation qualifications. It's before the semifinals on September 6th. So you have to have 2 premium events on MyWhoosh. And that's either 2 Sunday race clubs or 1 Sunday race club, and then your National Federation qualifier, that counts as a premium event. And the main reason for that is that they just want to get a baseline of your performance that they're able to compare for verification.
Yeah, and the expectation for that, Chris, is that it is on the same equipment that you'll be using for the semi-final as well.
Right, absolutely. Right, they need to know all of that so they'll be able to compare all those baselines. Which I think it's I know it may seem like an inconvenience for a lot of the racers, but I think that's standard, right? You would have to do the ZADA pre-verification when it was on Zwift, and a lot of the racers were already racing there. They didn't have any other options, so there was plenty of data for Zwift and the performance verification teams there to go off of. I know it's one of these things where it seems like a nuisance for the racers, but I think it's it's certainly the least that can be done in order to ensure that it's a level playing field. And that brings us to the big news of last week, which could have the greatest implications on our sport going forward.
Yeah, and that's that the IOC announced last week the Olympic Esports Games starting in 2025 for the next 12 years.
It's interesting because in my investigation, I've heard rumors that the KSA put in the bid for the last World Championship, which is really kind of interesting because there are a lot of really strong markers to the fact that Cycling Esports is going to be very prominently featured in the Olympic Esports Games. David Lepartien is not only the president of the UCI, but he's also chairman of IOC's Esports and Gaming Liaison Group, and he's a member of the IOC's General Assembly. I published an article in Cycling Weekly way back in January 31st after I interviewed him in Abu Dhabi when I was there, and he told me that the Olympic Esports Games will start in 2025 and will include cycling esports, and the program will include gaming, sports simulation, and physical virtual activities, and will be a distinct Olympic Esports Games. Many months later, we're seeing that come to fruition. And I'm actually really proud that I was able to get that out of him there. And it's kind of foreshadows where we are now. The IOC is going to be discussing that at their General Assembly, which I believe is the day before the opening ceremonies. So I'll be tuning into that to get some more details. I reached out to the UCI and the IOC, and they got back to me and they said, we'd love to tell you something, but we don't know anything right now.
And that opening ceremony, I think, is around the 29th of July, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah, so it's very soon. It's coming around.
It is very, very soon. It is indeed next week.
And it fits in with your theme, with Richard, very well. So we notice it's going to be a standalone games. It's not going to be associated with the normal program. But I do understand that it's going to come with all the medal recognition and all the distinctions that the normal Olympics would. And I think it's really exciting for the sport. It moves us forward, and it also paves the way for a platform that hosts the World Championships to perhaps host the Olympics going forward.
As you say, there's going to be many things that are going to start sparking people to do things differently, to get involved, and just think a little bit more than just online biking and what actually how that can be presented. I would love to do a indoor season, for instance, as we've seen in Belgium and those sort of things out there. There are platforms that will enable us to do that. So I think, in looking at the MyWhoosh of the worlds and the fact that you cycle as part of an indoor velodrome, my first question was, when can I use the velodrome? Because again, there are just all those events out there, and plus many other things that we're going to do. So I think it's going to really spark. It's going to take another 12 months or so to do it, but we're in at the start of it. So it's a journey that will take time, and if we can have some influence and in how it shapes and equally build a body together that has influence with those platforms, the platforms all come and want to listen and prove. At the end of the day, they're going to get no better test advice from millions of people who have been esporting with bikes for many, many years. They've got lots of eager people wanting to feed to them. So it's a blank piece of paper as far as I'm concerned. At the end of the day, anything can be done.
I'm just going to throw this out there, but it may pave the way for MyWhoosh in two sports. I'm just going to let that soak out there for a little bit. But one thing that I did want to bring up, because I've been working really hard to try to get this information for our American racers in the audience. I actually met with Kyle Knott, who's the events director over at USA Cycling this week, to try to get the details for the qualification race for the U.S. Both of the teams have a pretty broad allotment, and they've created their selection criteria, and they're also going to be creating a selection race that's going to be, I'm going to talk about this in very broad terms, but it'll be a 2-stage event that will mimic 2 of the stages of the World Championships courses and format. It will be in the last week in July before that August 1st deadline. Hopefully we will know something soon, but I don't have all the finalized details, but I wanted to let the American racers know that I'm working on that. I'm going to have the details as soon as possible over at the Zwift.
Well, I'll tell you something. It is surely an exciting future, and Richard, I completely agree with you. It's so good to be in the mix right now and to see where it goes. It's going to be a really great time, I think, for e-cycling. Well, that leaves me to say thank you to our guest today, Richard Vale from Flamme Rouge Racing. If you have enjoyed today's podcast and you want to know more, you can follow or subscribe to the Zwift. You can follow me at Biking Emma on Instagram. And Chris and I will be back in 2 weeks' time for episode 47, where we will be talking all things e-cycling with our guest, Elise Gallegos. Well, until then, enjoy your riding. Stay safe. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.